start out by having the resource people introduce themselves. Yeah, and Britta, you could put on the second slide there if you wanted to.
Yep.
No, actually, because the people are actually here. Let's have them introduce themselves. I'll pass it to Brittany. Brittany Gutermuth. And you're muted.
Yeah, no, I was which one? All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany Gutermuth, and I work at Mass Audubon, but very excited to be the chair of the current issue committee this year. And so, Stacy, let's talk. I'm just down the road from you in Southampton, so I want to help, and I'll help any team, actually. So should I just pass it to the next person? All right, so I'll pass it to Brittany P.
Hi there. Happy to be here. My name is Brittany Peets, and I work at the Massachusetts Food System Collaborative. We are a statewide nonprofit, and we do work on various food policy issues, including food waste, food literacy in schools, and the Healthy Incentives Program, which enables people who use SNAP to double their money at farmers markets. And I'll pass it over to Jennifer.
Hi, all. I'm Jennifer Feller, and I also work at Mass Audubon. And I'm gonna will be my, I think, third time going to an Envirothon, but I've only just watched it. I haven't really been a participant before, except a judge. So I'm new along with some of the other students, and I'll talk to you today about various strategies to reduce food waste. Oh, and I will pass it to, let's see. Britta, do you want to introduce yourself? And then we'll go to the schools.
Or Katie.
Oh, Katie.
Yes.
I didn't even know, Katie, I don't know. Hi, Katie. I didn't know you were a resource person.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Rosina Sampson. I work at the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources as the Agricultural Education Coordinator. I'm actually out today at the state apiary in Amherst. That's the reason I'm in my car. We just did a workshop for beekeepers and any interested public. But yeah, no, I'm so happy to be here and able to share any information I can and answer any questions.
Pass to Britta.
Pass to Britta. Sorry, Britta. Go ahead, Britta.
Hi, I'm Britta. I'm your Envirothon coordinator. I can also answer lots of questions about lots of different things. And you all have my email, so that's the best way to reach me.
Britta's got the most seniority at the Envirothon now.
Well, you're still there. Well, so, I think this is my 14th though, right? Something like that. Lots of fun.
I'm especially glad to see Frontier here because especially when we're looking at food systems and climate solutions, because you folks are in the heart of Massachusetts agriculture, and the food systems are all around you there. And so I think, this look into climate issues works for everybody, but particularly you folks in the Valley are in a great position. All of us resource people are happy to be resources beyond this session, but I want to get into our topics as quickly as we can. I guess by way of introduction of the topic, I would say, why a focus on food systems as a climate issue? You folks know that the food and how we get it and what happens to it afterwards is everywhere we look, and it's an issue that's big and possible to look at in every community in the state. Your community is full of committed people. I'm really glad that Brittany Peets is here because the Mass Collaborative, Food Systems Collaborative is, as far as I can see, the best organization representing those folks who are all across the food system, from production to distribution to dealing with hunger issues. They're all part of this vibrant network. So there are lots of people working to make a positive difference. A lot of them are very aware of the climate connections of food, so they are resource people who will be useful to you if you choose this topic. Food has a direct connection with climate issues in lots of different ways. Also, if your team, gets excited about the topic and wants to take action on it, not just do research, but take action, there are all kinds of opportunities in the food system to take action that's relevant to climate. It can be hands-on stuff. It can be, lobbying. It can be writing to the newspaper. There's all kinds of ways that you can affect change through food around the climate issue. So that's why we wanted to have this session today, give you a little chance to think about the different aspects of it. But I heard from at least one team that it's important to introduce the current issue and how that works in particular. So I'm going to pass that to Brittany Gutermuth. And you might want to put up your slide at this point. Yeah.
Britta, are you able to share? Oh, thank you. Britta's on it.
You can make these slides available to everybody.
All right. Well, so since we have some new teammates here, I will go over the current issue, and this year is climate change in your community. We're very specifically asking you to present on what the top action is you think your community should take to address climate change. And we've kind of broken this down for you so that you can answer some big questions. And when you come and you do your 15-minute presentation to the judges, very, very nice, like 5 to 7 people who will just be listening and so excited to hear all about your presentation. We'd like you to answer a couple questions. So the first thing you're going to do is define your community. And that's like the physical borders, but then also looking at what are your ecosystem assets, who lives here, what is vulnerable about your town, given the different climate impacts that your town will be seeing. The next step is to figure out who actually makes the decisions in your community, who could take this action that you're asking them to take, what's already being done, and then whose voice is missing in this conversation, who doesn't get a say, who really should. And hint, the answer to that could be youth, and you could be the answer to that. So step 3 is to figure out a solution to the problem that you find. And there's this brilliant person who has figured this out, Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, that we really need to start doing things that make us happy, because it's depressing and boring to do things that don't make us happy and that we're not good at. And so if we have to solve all the climate crisis anyway, let's do it in a way that makes us happy. We're going to think about what brings us joy, what we're good at, and then also what needs to be done. And so that's where you start to really do the research into your community. What do I need to do? But then also, what makes me happy? What am I good at? So next slide, please, Britta. Great, thank you. So, okay, so you're here at the food one. So we're going to assume that you're excited about this food systems change. So there are a bunch of different solutions that we can look at, and Will alluded to this as well. And I love things that rhyme. So please excuse me because all of the solutions rhyme. And so you might really be excited about climate mitigation, about how can we use alternative energy and stop burning so many fossil fuels that's making climate change just worse. How can we do extra sequestration? How can we use the food system to actually draw more carbon out of the atmosphere? participation in big projects like Meatless Monday. Remember, climate change is a huge problem. We need huge solutions. So we want to work together to get those solutions in place. We can look at legislation, which I think Brittany Peets is going to be talking about later. Adaptation. So the farms around here, this is a picture from Mountain View Farm in East Hampton, and they had to buy irrigation systems, which they never had to do before because of the length of the droughts that are happening now. And then my personal favorite, education, and how can we bring this information into our community so that people are keyed in from a really young age. Now remember, for the current issue, you don't need to actually do any of these, but if you do, you get to apply for the Community Engagement Award, and that's a whole another level of actually taking action in your community. Thanks, Britta.
Do we want to, before we go on, would you back up one, please? Does anybody have a question about what any of these words mean? I just want to make sure we're all, you know, and don't be shy. This is the whole point of these small informal workshops, is just, this is your chance to be like, what are you talking about? That's fine. Like, yeah. So just put up your little yellow Zoom hand or shout out or put it in the chat if you have a question. Okay. And that's gonna, yeah, talk to yourselves for a minute. Yeah, sequestration. Okay. So sequestration, good question. The idea is, you know, climate change essentially has come from burning too much fossil fuel, which has put, look, I do my thing every time I talk about it, has put too much carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And to sequester something means you take it down and you put it away. And so sequestering carbon means basically holding on to it and putting it away where it can't get into our atmosphere. So a really great way to do that is to put it away into plants. Trees in particular that will be around a long time, but also any plants that will hold on to that carbon for a long time. That's what we call sequestering carbon, because plants are mostly made up of carbon. So when they grow, they take carbon dioxide in. And when they stay, like a tree that lasts a long time, they hold it for a long time. So that is how they sequester carbon. Other ways to sequester carbon would be, there are ways of like weathering rocks where the rocks hold on to the carbon, but they're a little more technically advanced, and frankly, I don't understand them very well. And if anybody has other ones, any other of the resource people have other ways to sequester carbon, shout it out. Other interesting to think about agriculture and other forms of sequestration. Yeah, the other place in that you can sequester the carbon maybe is in the soil. There's been a lot of talk about that as you make soil healthier, basically with more organic material, that some of that carbon stays in the soil. I think it's a question, because I think soil also breathes. But the idea is, over time, if you make your soil richer and richer with more organic material, it will hold on to some of that carbon more. Will, is that a good summary of that?
Yeah, the soil breathes, but you can put carbon in the soil.
Yeah.
Just like when trees fall over and die, their carbon is released. The critical piece around climate change is that we have been pumping fossil carbon up and using it as fuel. And that's the main reason we have been adding carbon to the atmosphere in the last couple hundred years. So I was interested to see your picture of mitigation, which includes both a photovoltaic array and it looks like firewood. Is that right? Or is that
It was
Why
just
is the
supposed to
firewood?
look far. It was just you're reading too much into this picture, Will. It's a farm with solar panels on the roof instead of covering farmland and solar panels.
But you see that the firewood is actually it's carbon that's on the surface of the planet. It's not fossil carbon. So if we burn that firewood, it's yes, it's releasing carbon to the atmosphere that could be going to the soil, but it's carbon that's been circulating on the surface of the earth. It's not fossil carbon. It's not the main problem that we've got.
Well, we can have that discussion another day, but
no, we could have it right now if you want to.
So
okay, wait a minute. Wait, Jennifer, just let me note. I raised that because I wanted teams to see that there is some controversy around what constitutes good carbon, bad carbon, sequestering carbon, this kind of thing. So you're going to encounter some stuff like that, folks. It's not all the solutions aren't perfect or easy.
That's such a great point. And, you know, here we are, and we still are trying to understand the best ways. There's no, yes, this is all good, or yes, this is all bad. You know, it's all kind of like, let's move in this direction and let's really dig in and be comfortable asking hard questions. So I think, yeah, great point. Anyway, sequestering, just trying to get that carbon out of the atmosphere and into our living systems. The important thing to remember is that all living things are made of carbon. And so that helps you think about where the carbon is. All right. Now we can go to the next slide. All right. So one of the ways that we can think about that Venn diagram that Brittany showed us, the 3 circles that overlap, what brings me joy, what am I good at, and what needs doing. Well, one of the things, if the middle for you lands around food, you can think about eliminating food waste as one of the ways to mitigate. I think this would be a mitigation strategy. This would be a way that we can reduce the amount of carbon dioxide and methane in particular that's being emitted into the atmosphere. Basically, our world produces, we waste about 1/3 of the food that we produce. 1/3 of the food produced in the world goes to waste. And when that food is wasted, when it goes into either a landfill or kind of a badly managed compost pile, or who knows where it goes, it basically decomposes and either emits, in a good situation, emits carbon dioxide, but often emits methane, which is a really potent greenhouse gas. So food waste, that's one of the reasons it's really bad. The other reason is to produce any food requires so much energy. Think about all the energy that goes into transporting the seeds and the tractor that drives across the fields, and then all the people who have to come and harvest the food and then put it into a truck, and it goes somewhere on a truck or a train or a plane and gets to you, and then it's refrigerated. That takes a lot of electricity and possibly bad greenhouse gases. And so there's just all this all these greenhouse gases that are kind of embedded in the food we eat. And then to just see it wasted is just heartbreaking and a serious climate problem. One of the questions that we ask you to think about is this important enough for our community to take on? Is this a little problem with regard to climate or a big problem? In other words, will our actions have a big impact? And so a place that you can go check that, whether it's food waste or any other solution that you think of, is you can go check on a resource called Project Drawdown. Can somebody put that in the chat? It's also on our slide at the end, I think. Project Drawdown is a great place to just go check. Is this really impactful? Is this something, because they've done a lot of research and they can say, yeah, this has the capacity to seriously bring down our greenhouse gases, or well, it's a nice to do, but it's probably not that impactful. Food waste is one that is very impactful. And so that's why we put it on here. This is a place where you can have a lot of impact. Will.
Yeah, I just want to say, the Project Drawdown is a great place to get a big picture, but and also in terms of where you can have impact, I would say look around your community. If there are people who are working on this issue in the community, and you can add your shoulder to the wheel on that, that's another way to have a big impact. So look on the larger scale to see if it's important from a big climate perspective, and also look at the local level to see if you can, with a small effort, make a difference in educating or some other kind of action on it. And I would say, in terms of knowing the Envirothon judges, I would say that if you make a strong case why you think it's important, they'll listen to you. They won't argue with you that, well, Project Drawdown says that something else is more important than food waste, and so I'm going to mark you down on that. No, they'll listen to your reasons. They will listen to you. So
Yeah.
so have good reasons. Think carefully on the larger and smaller scale about your what your recommendations would be.
Yeah, food waste may be not a big issue in your community, but it may be. You have to go out and find out what's going on locally. And then so that's step 2 is, what is our community? If you decide, yeah, this is an issue we want to take on, you need to start before you jump into, well, I know what we should do. Start with the research part, right? Start with, what are people in our community already doing? Just as Will just said, you need to go out and talk to them and ask them. Talk to the people who handle municipal waste in your community. Talk to maybe your nutrition, whoever's in charge of food in your school, for example. Usually the nutrition manager, they're called, or something like that. Like, where do they get their food? How much is wasted? On a community level, are there laws? And I think Brittany might talk about this, but are there laws about where restaurants have to dump all the waste that that they produce, or where grocery stores have to put their waste? Like, what's going on? Where's all this food going? So go find out, go ask some folks, and then talk to them too about, as Will said, who's already working on this? What solutions are already out there? Because you starting a whole new solution is one option, but in terms of having a major impact, joining forces with others who are already at work on something is really an amazing way to leverage your impact and, be able to potentially make a really strong change in your community. All right. And then lastly, I would just urge you to think about working on a systems level instead of an individual level. So while it's really important what we all do individually, in terms of actually moving the needle on climate change, we need to work on our systems, right? So while it is important that I, don't just take heaping plates of food when I only intend to eat this much food, right? And I think about, how much am I going to waste? That alone is probably not going to solve climate change. But if a lot of our communities start to think more carefully about how much we buy versus how much we use, or what we do with our waste, then we start to have a major impact. So just asking you to think on a systems level. Okay, and we can move on. Next slide. Yeah, and this just is a slide that kind of shows that we actually need all of the above. So it's whatever solution you decide to work on is going to help. If we do nothing, that's kind of on food waste, that's sorry, take a moment to look at this, at the graph. I always forget to do this. Take a look at the x-axis, which starts at 2020, goes all the way to the end of the century. And the y-axis, anybody want to say what the y-axis is? Got to turn your head this way. What's it say? as confusing. It's basically a measure of surface air temperature. So of our global warming, how much temperature would this action increase or reduce overall? So essentially it's showing that if we don't do anything by by the year 2100, we will have, food waste has the potential to increase the global surface air temperature by almost a degree, which is insane. But if we start to reduce our retail food waste, so stores throwing things away, that could bring things down. Consumer food waste, which is us buying things, wasting less, that can bring things down. Decarbonization of food production, meaning maybe we could use electric tractors. Maybe we could use fertilizers that aren't made from oil. There are a lot of ways we could do that. And then what about if we ate a plant-based diet? What about if we didn't eat so much meat, which would then reduce the amount of carbon, of methane produced by cows, and also of land that we need to use for cow production instead of for food production. All of those things, each one of them is an impactful solution that you could work on. If we do them all, look what an incredible impact we could have. All right. And let's go to the next slide. I think, Will, you wanted to mention something about this one?
Yeah, this is an image from the Environmental Protection Agency, although other groups have done it too. And then there are some links to some brand new reports down at the bottom on what they call sustainable management of food. This shows that there are lots of different ways that food recovery can happen, and there's some that are more preferred than others. The ones higher up on the triangle are more preferred, and down at the bottom are least preferred. So the most preferred way to reduce wasted food is through source reduction. Reduce the volume of surplus food generated. So don't grow as much don't grow more than we need, if you can do that. And then feeding hungry people, feeding animals, industrial uses, and see how far down the list composting is. Most of us think of composting as what you do with food that we waste, but they're, on a societal scale, that's just barely above the worst thing, which is landfilling. It's basically what composting does is scientists, you tell me, but I think it limits the methane formation and the carbon. Some of the carbon can go back into your garden and some goes into the air. But notice the green stripe, feed animals. This is another controversy that you will encounter, is the question of the plant-based diet. Brittany, did you have let's see. Oh, sorry.
Well, I'm here to talk about plant-based diets if anybody wants to, but we had so much great content to cover today that I just figured I could connect with teams directly if that's something they're interested in.
Yeah, so there are, okay, good. So there are several different sides to the animals in our diet. The main reason I wanted to present this triangle is that is for you to see that there are lots of ways that your community could address wasted food, and to keep these all in mind as possibilities. That's all. I think we're going to pass to Katie now. Is that right?
All right. You guys see me? Yes. Okay, great. Hello, everyone. So as I mentioned, I work with the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources, So I wanted to share a little bit about the practices that our farmers are already doing to mitigate some of the worst effects of climate change. You know, you hear a lot of times farmers markets are at the absolute mercy of Mother Nature. You know, everything that happens, whether it's temperature fluctuations or changes in precipitation, is going to affect a farmer and their crop, which ultimately does affect the food supply. You know, if you have an early frost or one year, you may not have a fruit tree the next year. So there's just a lot of things that go into agriculture in terms of just climate change itself. So different things that our farmers are doing, they're environmental stewards. You know, a lot of people are practicing regenerative agriculture. So different practices that are restorative to the earth, planting cover crop, you know, rotational grazing, things like that, things that aren't causing any harm long term on the planet. A lot of energy, ways to generate energy using solar. So solar panels, as we saw in that picture a couple slides ago, you know, on buildings, on barns. Sometimes they do, if you have a field that I've seen it, that they'll have solar panels, but they'll also have something growing in them. You know, you'll have a shade loving row that will have the solar panel on top of it, and then next to it they get full sunlight. Anaerobic digestion, I did include this video. I'm not going to play it now just in the interest of time, but anaerobic digestion is a huge thing that our dairy farmers do. I believe at this point we have either 4 or 5 anaerobic digesters in the state at dairy farms, and what they do is they collect all the waste from a farm, food waste, animal waste, you know, plant waste, and they have these amazing outputs: electricity, heat, a clean fertilizer that can be used on the fields that have no harsh chemicals or anything bad in it. Anaerobic digestion, if you don't know about it on a farm, is an absolutely fascinating topic, and I would definitely you know, recommend you just look up a video of it. It's such a cool thing that our farmers are using. In this upper left picture here, that is an anaerobic digester. Other things are no-till farming, so that's part of that regenerative agricultural practices. So, you know, not tilling the soil, allowing the soil, you know, we talked a lot, Will was talking about soil health and you know, how important and how, you know, Jennifer said that the soil breathes. It does. It's a living thing. So wanting to make sure you're taking care of your soil, taking care of the land, especially when there is opportunities for drought. If, you know, there's not a lot of rain or snow during a season, that could severely impact irrigation and how your plants can grow if you don't have irrigation. Composting, that's another really big one, trying to create a nutrient dense product that you can use to grow food. Geothermal heating, like I mentioned, soil health. Yes, I can do that. So the question is, can I explain a little bit about how anaerobic digestion is different than composting? So I am not an expert on anaerobic digestion. I will say that and preface that. So if anybody else will, if you'd like to jump in at any time and add anything, pretty much what happens in anaerobic digestion is all of the waste gets put into this big, I don't know what you'd call it. We'll call it a vat for lack of a better term. And I believe that anaerobic is without air, correct?
Without oxygen, yeah.
Oxygen, thank you. So without oxygen, so there's no oxygen in. So what happens is everything gets broken down, and the act of that breaking down helps to create the electricity and heat. And then after it's been broken down, and anaerobic digestion can go off of the farm, right? Like there are different organizations that try to partner with farms that have an anaerobic digester to get rid of their food waste. So particularly a school could do it, or a hospital, you know, with their food waste and things like that. So that's a great opportunity. like I said, animal waste is huge, right? Because on a dairy farm, you're going to get a lot of animal waste. So what happens is it breaks down without oxygen, and it has all these positive byproducts. And I think the most impressive thing with a lot of anaerobic digestion is it not only gets rid of waste in a quicker way. I'm not sure exactly how long it takes to break down something. It could be a couple of days. Like I said, I'm not an exact expert on it. And I would encourage you all to watch that video. It's a very cool video that out of Barstow's, which is in Hadley. They're one of the farms that have an anaerobic digester, but it breaks it down and it really has all these positive outputs. And a farm can essentially live off the grid based on the energy and the heat that's supplied by an anaerobic digester. So it can kind of be this closed loop system that doesn't need to pull more energy from the grid to be able to break that stuff down.
Can we ask, Stacy has something to say too?
Yes, please.
So here in Deerfield, we also have a dairy farmer that has a anaerobic digester, and they are always willing to do tours. So if, depending on reaching out and finding the different farms that are using them, I know there's quite a few up in Vermont, and and here in Deerfield, they have farmers from all over the country coming and looking at their system and how they collect the methane and then burn it off to create electricity, as well as the byproducts. So.
Yes, thank you so much. So if anybody has any questions about getting in contact with the farm, I know Vanguard Renewables works with a lot of farms, but you can also reach out directly to me and I'd be happy to introduce you to a farm, whether you're able to go out and visit that farm or simply do a Zoom call with a farmer. There's a couple of them throughout the state that would be more than happy to do a tour or just to talk about it. But I think anaerobic digestion is one of the coolest things a farmer does to me, especially our dairy farmers. I think it's so wonderful. So moving on, we talked about soil health. A lot of, like I said, the soil is the medium that a lot of farmers, produce farmers at the very least, are using to grow their things. So they their products. So they obviously want to take very good care of it. IPM, which is integrated pest management, that's using both organic and chemicals to kind of work together and get rid of pests. So integrated pest management is really cool. Sometimes, for instance, if you have one pest that's really bothering your plants, you can introduce a different bug that might eat that pest, but that won't damage your plants. So it's kind of nature's way of pest control, but farmers use that quite a lot. I know a lot of landscape and nursery farmers use that, especially, with growing flowers. Aphids is a really big problem. And then finally, high tunnel houses is another sustainable practice. It's a great way to be able to extend the growing season and grow plants and all of that you may not otherwise be able to because of the greenhouse effect. With a high tunnel housing, you're getting that greenhouse effect, and a lot of them have flaps you can open up if it gets too hot, or you can close them if you need it to be a little bit warmer. So those are just a few, and I'm happy to talk about it. A lot of our grant programs we have through the department help fund farmers, allows farmers to apply for funding for these types of projects, our energy and environmental grants. So I'm happy to talk about any more of that if anyone has any questions, both on or offline. And then if you want to go to the next slide, I'm trying to be conscious of time. Britta, are you there? Oh, marvelous, thank you. So another really big thing, and it kind of all goes back to these food systems, is buying local. So our food choices, they make a difference. And in purchasing local through a farmer's market or going directly to a farm stand or a CSA, which is community supported agriculture, that's a practice in which you buy a share into a farm for a season. And then all throughout that season, you receive, typically it's a box of different produce because you're buying into that share. So it's a great way to support a farm and also to support your community by supporting local businesses, the local economy, as well as just getting fresh food that you know where it's being grown. A lot of times buying local can cut down on the distance and fossil fuels that it takes to transport foods over long distances, right? If you're going down the street or into the town next over to go to a farm and purchase your vegetables, it's going to be a lot different than going to the grocery store where something may be grown. And don't get me wrong, you know, we have seasonality for a reason. Not, you know, tomatoes aren't ready for us in the middle of December as they are in other states. So, you know, sometimes, you know, you have to look at that. But during the summer when tomatoes are plentiful, it's you going next door to your farm or into a town or a farmer's market, it's going to be so more impactful and climate friendly than as opposed to going to a grocery store and buying something that's coming from another country or from across our country. So, you know, we have something at our department called the Mass Grown and Fresher Map. It is a great resource that you can go on. You can type in what you're looking for, whether you're looking for milk or a pick your own apple orchard, you know, meat. The possibilities are really endless. And you can look up whether statewide or a certain distance from you to see, you know, where you're able to purchase items or go and pick your own items. So I'd encourage you to check that out either way. I think it's a really great resource. It's our most visited website on our MDAR page. So it's a really great resource that we use all the time to try to allow people to find their local farmers markets or farm stands or pick your own. And our favorite thing, you know, herbivores eat plants, carnivores eat meat, locavores eat local. So that's it for me. I will wrap up, but I am available for questions, and any questions you may have, please feel free to send me an email at any time, and I'm happy to share any resources we have, or like I said, if you're interested in and you just don't know kind of where to start, we are more than happy to help connect you.
I'm gonna
Great.
pass,
Go for it.
I'm gonna pass to Brittany Peets.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. So it sounds like you probably have a lot of ideas about kind of what's happening maybe at the local level in terms of different projects, different approaches to combating climate change through the food system. I'm going to talk about a little bit of a different angle, which is trying to address some of these through policy. So I think I mentioned at the beginning that we're a statewide nonprofit and we work on food policy issues. So I thought I would just kind of talk about a couple of the statewide bills that we are supporting. And the goal of our organization is to bring forward the recommendations in the Massachusetts Local Food Action Plan. So that's another place you could go. That's another resource. But it has a lot of recommendations on how to improve the local food system, including how to make it more sustainable. And so all of the projects that we work on kind of try to move Massachusetts towards that. So these are four of the bills that we are supporting. There are many more that we are supporting, as well as others that other organizations are trying to bring forward. So just as a quick recap or quick overview, this act to promote food literacy. So this is the idea that students should learn about food in schools. So we think that by students understanding how food is grown, where it's grown, how it's transported, that students who will then become adults will make decisions that will have a better impact on the environment. So understanding, as people had said earlier, kind of what diets you choose to eat will impact the environment. The next one is an act promoting equity in agriculture. And Katie kind of talked about how it's important to buy local food, support the local food system. And I would say it's important to make sure that all people who want to participate in the agricultural system in Massachusetts have the ability to do that. Because of the history of racism in our country, and in particular in the food system, through history and ongoing. BIPOC people have less access to the capital, land that they need to participate in agriculture. So this act would help to make sure that we're doing the research that we need to understand the problem, as well as the solutions, the potential solutions, to make sure that everybody who wants to farm can farm, because we really need a strong local food system. The other act is an act relative to the Agricultural Healthy Incentives Program. So hopefully you've seen the poster at farmers markets, if you've been, that talks about the Healthy Incentives Program. But basically it's a state-funded program that enables people who use SNAP, also known as food stamps, to double their money at farmers markets. So again, this kind of another way to support both consumers having more access to healthy food, but also making sure that local farmers have a bigger customer base. So making sure that the local farmers can really kind of stay in business, because it can be kind of difficult to do that. And then the last one, this kind of speaks a little bit to the food waste discussion that we were having earlier. So this is encouraging the donation of food to persons in need. So we talked about the food waste hierarchy. You probably noticed that feeding people in need was pretty far up to the top. So this act would try to encourage farms and restaurants or grocery stores to donate food instead of throwing it away, plowing it under, composting it. We've heard that, you know, many farms, for whatever reason, they have more apples than they expected, or, you know, all the tomatoes became ripe at the same time, or, you know, some of the squash are just a little bit too small for the typical markets. It makes it hard for them to sell these things, and so it costs time and money to store them and harvest them. So often farmers make the kind of difficult decision, instead of harvesting this food and donating it, we're just going to plow it under or leave it in the fields. So this would give tax incentives to farmers that do donate their food, up to $5,000 per year. So we're really excited about that, because it would get a lot of really good food into the food system, and it wouldn't go to waste. So those are just 4 of the policies that we're working on right now. Happy to talk about others or to go into more details about these.
Thanks, Brittany. So I would say, I want to say 2 things about the food policy issue. One is that something new this year for Envirothon current issue research is that we are encouraging people as part of a full research project of the issue in your community to look at legislation that is before the state legislature that relates to the particular angle on the climate issue that you choose. So you can see here that there's lots of food policy legislation. Massachusetts is very strongly, has a lot of strong advocates for the food system. And these names that you see up here are some of those folks. And some of them are representing some of you. And the other thing I would say is that it's tough to farm financially in Massachusetts. It's tough to make money. And when we talk about addressing climate change, the changes in farm practices that Katie was talking about, those cost money. There are lots of farmers who would like to do more to address climate change, but they just can't make it work financially. So anything we can do, and all these pieces of legislation support farmers. And when we buy local, we're supporting farmers. Anything we can do that supports farms in Massachusetts can make it easier for farmers to address climate change. Brockton says, what are some things we can do? Wait a minute. What are some things we can do to help support and enforce these acts? Good question. Do you want to answer that, Brittany, Pete?
Yeah, I would love to. Definitely, please do. We would love to have your voices. There are a lot of different ways that you can get involved. I think that one of the ways would be to figure out who your legislators are. There's a website online, I can put it in the chat, where you can type in your address and it will tell you who your legislators are. And then you can reach out to them and talk to them about the issues that you think are important. I think that because you are young, though you may not vote, they really want to hear your perspectives, because you'll be living with the kind of ramifications of a lot of their actions far longer than many of their constituents. So yes, please reach out to them. If you'd like to kind of support any of these in particular, the collaborative sends out monthly newsletters about how to get involved, as well as kind of focused emails about different actions you can take. Like, for example, tomorrow, we're going to go to Ag Day at the State House, and there are some students that are going to come and talk to legislators and drop off information with legislators to talk about the first bill that I listed, the Act to Promote Food Literacy. So that's directly talking about things that will affect students in their schools. Yeah, I will put some more information in the chat.
I wasn't sure we were going to get to me. I have a couple minutes here. So yeah, I want to talk about soil health a little bit. Building healthy soil as a climate protection opportunity. There's a revolution going on in awareness of the soil resource, including soil as a resource to slow climate change. And that would be something with many facets that you could investigate in your community. It used to be, when I was a kid, soil was essentially a medium for that kind of helped plants stand up straight, and you had to feed that soil with fertilizer, and you had to protect the plant with toxic pesticides. And so soil was just a place for plants to grow in. And that system required a lot of fossil fuels. So we've gone from that. We're making the switch to understanding, as Katie was saying, soil as a living thing, as a living ecosystem in itself and part of the larger ecosystem. And there are all kinds of resources to help you understand that. And I would say in most Massachusetts farms are kind of ahead of the rest of the country in terms of climate smart soil management. If I could make that generalization. But there's still a long ways to go. And it would be interesting if you have farms in your community to ask them about climate smart soil practices and what they're doing and what they would need, what equipment they would need, what new knowledge they would need, what changes they would have to make in order to be more climate smart in their practices. And if you approach it as a non-judgmental thing, it's like, but what are you doing to help? And and how could we help you? How could your community help you? That would be a good way to do it. I want to stray a little bit from, let's see, I guess I just want some of these pictures that I pulled off the web. Actually, the one on the upper right is from Springfield, Massachusetts, and it's actually it's the Gardening the Community group, and they are the ones who, you know, that image in the lower middle with the kid on the bicycle pulling vegetables. That is the Gardening the Community CSA. They distribute, that's how they distribute their CSA shares every week, is by bicycle with a bicycle trailer. So anyway, these young people in Springfield, they garden, they grow food. What you see up in the top right is they're actually installing a rain garden. Some of you may be familiar with rain gardens if you've done Envirothon in the past when we looked at water issues. Soil is a really important element of the rain garden, which is a place where water can sit and soak in rather than run off, and the plants can thrive and help create soil there. So soil health is a bigger issue than just food. And I also wanted another issue related to soil health and not food is lawns. Did you know that lawns make up 20% of the land area in Massachusetts? It's 2% of the land area of the country as a whole, but 20% in Massachusetts. So how we treat our lawns is a huge opportunity for climate action. We probably don't need as much lawn as we have, but whatever lawn we feel we need can be managed in ecological ways for soil health. Plant diversity, critter diversity, cycling nutrients, drought resistance, all these are can be enhanced by some ecologically sound practices rather than planting a monoculture of only one kind of grass and then feeding it with fertilizer and treating it with pesticides and irrigating it with water, all these outside inputs. A lawn is pretty able to take care of itself if you nudge it in the right ways. Big issue that some of you may encounter is sports fields. That picture down in the lower right corner is actually astro or artificial turf, which was a green solution 30 years ago when we realized that we could turn old tires into artificial turf. But now those fields are getting old. They're maybe making us more prone to injuries, and we're going to have to get rid of them somehow. In the meantime, we could be, and so this is another controversial issue, and you'll find me strongly on one side of it. Why do we need these artificial turf fields when we could grow ecologically sound playing fields? And if they have some bare spots or rough spots, isn't that just part of the game? That's what I would ask. Anyway, soil health, and the next slide will show you some resources for gardening and soil health. I didn't talk about gardening. Gardening is not all of our communities have farms, but all of our communities have huge gardening opportunities. And I read today that 15% of the food produced in the world is produced in urban areas. So, and Massachusetts has several initiatives that relate to urban agriculture and community gardening. Growing food in the city is good for people's nutrition. It's good for reducing the heat island effect. It's good for building community. There's all kinds of positive ways that that gardening can fight climate change and do much more for us. I'd recommend looking at gardening as an opportunity for addressing the issue this year. And that's all I will say.